Today we'll take a look at the Extrude tool. Now, extrusion is simple and it's very straightforward. It's also one of the most powerful tools that you'll use in Blender. Alright, in our default scene, I've taken our default cube and I've subdivided it several times. I've then moved it over and added a UV sphere and a plane. If you want to follow along, go ahead and create that scene now. Now, since we can extrude any of our subcomponents, vertices, edges, or faces, I wanted the chance for everyone to see how we can apply extrusion in several different ways. Let's start by taking a look at our tool panel. Right away, we can see that there are two major types of extrusion: region and individual. We can also access our extrude tool through two hotkeys, because of course we can, and preferably that's how we'll always do it. Those hotkeys are, as you might suspect, E, and the additional one is Alt-E. Now, if we hit E for an extrusion, that will access regional extrusion immediately. If we use Alt-E, that will give us access to Blender's Extrude menu. Let's look at some forms of extrusion. I'm going to make sure our cube is selected and tab into Edit mode. Hitting Control Tab, I'll select Faces. Then I'll go ahead and select the middle four faces and hit E. As you can see, I can now pull or extrude the faces, and Blender will build geometry to connect them to the spot of their original position. This, at its most basic, is what extrusion is. I can move that geometry out or push it in, whatever suits my building needs. Now, by default, Blender will calculate the direction of the faces and choose a default axis for the extrusion that makes the most sense. Most of the time, it's exactly what we want. But you should note that we can control the axis, just like everything else, by selecting it with our X, Y, or Z keys. However, when extruding faces, this often is not very handy. But, as you will see in the future, we will have cause to use it on occasion. Now, let's tab out of Edit mode. Let's select our sphere and tab back in. In our last example with the cube, we used our E key to do a regional extrude with multiple faces. What did that really mean? Well, the regional extrude basically means that Blender treated all of those selected faces as if it was just one face and created geometry around the border. This time, let's use our box select and select a number of faces on our sphere. And instead of E, we'll use Alt-E to access our menu. I'll choose individual faces and extrude them. As I pull the faces out, we can see that Blender creates fill geometry for each face rather than for the border of selections. You can see how powerful this tool gets pretty quickly. Alright, let's move on to our plane. I'll tab out of Edit mode, select our plane, and tab back in. I'll use Control-Alt or Control-Tab to select Edge mode, and I'll select the left edge. I'll hit E for Extrude, and out of this single face, I'll pull out a new additional face. I could also hit Y and lock that face to the Y-axis. And since we're here, here's a new one I'd like to show you. You're used to using X, Y, and Z to lock an axis. But instead of hitting Y, now I'm going to hit Shift and then X. As you can see, now I can extrude along the Y and Z axis simultaneously while keeping the X axis locked out. being able to use multiple axes at once can be very, very handy. So remember that shift key. Shift and the axis you don't want. Alright, I also want to look at extruding vertices. So, I'm going to undo back to my original plane, and I'm going to hit Control and Tab and go into vertex mode. I'm going to select the back two verts, and I'm going to hit X to delete them. Now, we're left with just two verts and a single edge. Let's go into side view, number 3, and make sure we're in orthographic view, number 5. I'll select the right vertex and hit E several times, choosing a new spot to create a vertex each time. Now, when I get near the original left vertex, I'll make sure that my last created vertex is still selected, and I'll then select the original left vertex, and I'll hit F for fill. The line will fill in between those two vertices, and now we've created a complex shape. Now I'll box select all of the verts and hit F again, filling the shape with an n-gon for a face. Let's hit Ctrl Z and undo that. And with all of our verts still selected, now let's hit Alt F. Now we've created a number of faces that are triangulated, but we've still filled in our complex shape. Now that we've used Extrude to create a complex face, let's go one further while all of our verts are selected and hit E again. I can pull out that face, and now we have a complex three-dimensional piece of geometry to work with. Hopefully you're beginning to see just how powerful Extrude can be, and just how many different ways you can use it. Alrighty, let's take a moment and review what we've learned. We know we can extrude using both E and Alt E, and that E will extrude regionally, while Alt E will give us the extrude menu so we can choose our extrusion type. We've seen the difference between regional and individual extrusions, with regional treating all of our selection as if it were one, and individual doing just what it says and keeping each individual face separate. We've learned that we can extrude not just faces, but also edges and vertices. We've locked our extrusions to an axis or to multiple axes by using our axis keys, or by using the shift key and the axis that we don't want, so that we can move in the other two simultaneously. We visited our F key and Alt F to either fill in our extrusions with an n-gon face, which means more than 4 vertices, or with triangulated face. Alright, we won't do a quiz here, as we'll get plenty of experience with extrusions in our Chapter 3 lab. So, I'll see everyone in the next video, and make sure you've really pounded this video home. This is the tool of tools. I'll see you then.